We laughed about the boxes. We mocked the figurines. For years, it all felt like harmless clutter. But what was once a joke has crossed a line into something far more dangerous. Yesterday, a Zillow listing for the Flagstaff mansion briefly appeared online and then vanished. It was live for exactly 14 minutes, long enough for screenshots to be captured, long enough to expose a secret the family never intended to surface. The seller wasn't Cody Brown. It was a brand new LLC, quietly registered in Arizona, and the only name attached to it was Robyn Brown. That single detail cracked open what now looks like a full-blown exit strategy, because at the same time that listing went live, an alleged notice from the fire marshal was posted at the property: unsafe conditions, hoarding violations, and behind the scenes, audio has reportedly surfaced of Cody realizing that the one wife he trusted above all others may have been liquidating assets without his knowledge. This isn't reality PV drama anymore. This is a collapse in real time. The family is trying to keep this contained, but when a foundation is rotting from the inside, the truth leaks out. And it's leaking fast, because there's a clock attached to this story, a 30-day clock. It all started quietly on a Tuesday afternoon. While most fans were distracted by tell-all fallout, one Reddit user was casually scrolling Flagstaff real estate listings. No expectations. Brown Properties had been stagnant for months. Then the page refreshed, and there it was, the Shiro Chateau, the crown jewel of Cody Brown's empire, listed for sale. But something was off. There was no glossy video tour, no drone footage, no marketing push. It appeared as a coming soon pocket listing, the kind agents use when something is being moved quietly. The asking price was staggering, $4.2 million. Aggressive for this market. But the price wasn't the real shock. The seller information was. Cody Brown has always insisted on having his name on everything, every deed, every title, every asset. Control is his currency. Yet in this listing, the seller was listed under a blind trust. When that trust was traced, it led straight to a newly formed Arizona LLC, and Cody's name was nowhere on it, only Robyn's. That suggests one of two things. Either Robyn was preparing to sell the home without Cody's direct involvement, or she had already maneuvered the asset into a corporate shell that effectively cut him out. And then came the two words that made insiders' blood run cold: cash only, sold as is. At a $4 million price point, that combination is almost unheard of. It signals urgency, panic, a need for immediate, untraceable liquidity. So why would they need that much cash right now without waiting for a traditional mortgage process? Here's where the timing becomes impossible to ignore. When the listing went live, Cody Brown was not in Flagstaff. Fan photos and social sightings place him hundreds of miles away in Oklahoma, out of state, out of reach, unable to physically intervene. The window was small, and Robyn took it. 14 minutes later, the listing was gone. Did someone alert Cody? Did a fan message him? Or did the agent realize the listing went public far earlier than intended? We may never know. But what didn't disappear were the screenshots, and those screenshots sent investigators looking beyond the digital trail and into the house itself. If the home was being sold as is, what condition was it really in? For years, viewers noticed the clutter, boxes stacked in the background of FaceTime calls, garage pathways shrinking. But what appeared on television now looks like a sanitized version of reality, because new reports suggest the situation inside that mansion is far darker. A tip surfaced from someone claiming to be a former delivery driver servicing the Flagstaff area. Their account was briefly posted on a local forum before being deleted, but not before it was archived. According to this source, deliveries to the Brown residence happened multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. They claimed the front door could no longer open fully. The porch was buried in packages. Boxes were stacked so high that deliveries had to be left in the driveway, and the smell inside wasn't normal. Stale air, dust, the kind of heaviness you feel in a space that hasn't breathed in years. The most disturbing detail? They reported hearing a child crying somewhere deeper in the house, but being unable to see anyone through the maze of stacked boxes. That account changed how fans viewed recent drone footage of the property, because when you look closely at the lower-level windows, many aren't simply curtained. They appear blacked out, covered with cardboard or heavy material pressed directly against the glass. At the time, people assumed it was for privacy, but in hoarding situations, blocking windows is common. It hides the mess, it shuts out light, it keeps outsiders from seeing how bad things really are. And in a fire-prone area like Flagstaff, blocked exits combined with towers of cardboard create a lethal hazard. That's where the orange notice comes in. A grainy photo began circulating privately, showing an orange paper taped to the famous front gate of the property. Enhanced, the header appears consistent with fire marshal and code enforcement. Language, notice to abate, code violation. This isn't a suggestion, this is a legal demand. Fix the conditions or the property can be condemned. Imagine the pressure inside that house. Cody trying to maintain the illusion of control, Robyn drowning in accumulation, and in the middle of it, a secret LLC and a rushed cash-only listing. These are not the actions of a united couple. These are the actions of people preparing for impact. The long-standing narrative of Robyn as the obedient, loyal wife is cracking. You don't secretly list a house if you're secure. You don't rush to liquidate assets if everything is fine. The prevailing theory is simple and brutal. The money is gone. The family pot, once filled by Mary, Janelle, and Christine, is empty. The mortgage is massive. The lifestyle is unsustainable. And if the home is officially condemned due to hoarding violations, its value collapses. Robyn may have realized waiting means losing everything, so she tried to sell the shell while she still could. And then it gets worse, because this isn't just a financial crisis. If the reports are accurate, it's a child safety issue. Solomon and Ariella may be living in a home that could be legally classified as unsafe, and that raises one terrifying question. Who made the call? Code enforcement is complaint-driven. They don't randomly inspect gated properties set back from the road. Someone who had access, someone who saw the conditions, had to report it. That's where a shocking new theory emerges. Mary Brown. Reports place Mary in Flagstaff just days before the orange notice appeared. She was reportedly there to collect remaining personal items. If Mary stepped inside that house, if she saw blocked exits, blacked out windows, and dangerous clutter, she may have faced a moral choice: stay silent or protect the children. The same night the rumored inspection occurred, Mary posted an Instagram story, a simple, smiling selfie, but the song playing in the background was "Burning Down the House." To some, that's coincidence. To others, it's a message. Shortly after, the pressure exploded publicly. A fan-captured video in a Flagstaff parking lot shows Cody and Robyn in a heated confrontation. No cameras, no producers, just raw panic. Cody is pacing, gesturing aggressively. Robyn is crying, but not performing. This looks real. Lip-reading analysis suggests Cody shouts, "You listed it without me." And then comes the line that reframes everything. Where is the gold? This is where the gold bar theory takes hold. Cody has openly distrusted banks. Fans have long speculated that family funds were converted into physical assets, precious metals stored inside the home. In a hoarded environment, those assets can disappear or be hidden. If the city has ordered a cleanout within 30 days, that gold is at risk of being hauled away as junk, and that explains the panic, the screaming, the desperation. They can't just hire a cleanup crew. They would have to sift through every single box themselves, against a deadline. Fire marshal involvement often triggers mandatory reporting, and in hoarding cases, CPS is frequently notified. If emergency personnel can't access a child's room, if exits are blocked, removal becomes a real possibility. The 30-day clock is real, and it's almost up. Neighbors now report seeing Cody sleeping in a trailer on the property, his truck parked outside, the mansion effectively off-limits. The man who demanded a castle is now living in a tin box, guarding a house he can't control. So the final question is simple. Who moves first? Does Cody cooperate with the city and risk losing whatever assets are hidden inside, or does Robyn manage to relist the house and disappear before the deadline hits? By Friday, we'll have our answer, because either the dumpsters arrive or the authorities do. And this empire won't fall with a bang, but with an orange notice taped to a gate and a house full of boxes that finally tells the truth. For a long time, people treated it like a running joke. The stacks, the clutter, the endless deliveries, something viewers rolled their eyes at and moved on from. But what if none of it was harmless? What if the situation quietly crossed into something dangerous and no one wanted to say it out loud? because yesterday, something slipped through the cracks. For a brief moment, a Flagstaff property tied to the Brown family appeared online. It wasn't promoted, it wasn't announced, it simply surfaced and then disappeared. 14 minutes, that's all it took. But those 14 minutes were enough to expose a move that may have been months in the making. The house wasn't listed under Cody Brown. It was listed under a newly created business entity, and that entity traced back to Robyn Brown alone. That detail instantly reframed everything. This wasn't a casual listing. It looked calculated, quiet, almost secretive, and the timing made it worse, because whispers were already circulating that the property had attracted official attention. Not gossip, not rumors, actual concerns tied to safety. At that point, this stopped feeling like reality TV drama and started to feel like damage control. The family has gone silent, but silence doesn't stop momentum, especially when there's a deadline involved, because once authorities get involved, time becomes the enemy, and according to multiple sources, the countdown has already begun. Here's how it unraveled. While most fans were distracted by post-tell-all chaos, one online user was casually scanning Flagstaff real estate listings, something many longtime viewers do out of curiosity. Nothing had changed for months, until suddenly it had. A familiar address appeared. The most expensive, most symbolic home tied to the family was quietly marked as coming soon. There were no flashy visuals, no promotional rollout, just a bare-bones entry with a price tag that immediately raised eyebrows. Over $4 million. High enough to demand attention, but not high enough to explain the urgency that followed. The real shock was buried deeper. Ownership details didn't follow the usual pattern. Historically, Cody's name is everywhere. He doesn't relinquish control easily, but this time his name was absent. Instead, the trail led to a private trust, which led to a newly registered LLC, and that LLC pointed back to Robyn. No co-owner, no joint control, just her. That raises a disturbing possibility. Either the home was being positioned for sale without Cody's direct involvement, or it had already been shifted into a structure that gave her leverage he didn't have. And then came the wording that set off alarms for anyone familiar with high-end real estate. Cash buyers only, properties sold as is. At that level, those terms don't signal confidence, they signal urgency. Something that needs to move fast, something that can't afford scrutiny, something that doesn't want questions. And then the timing clicked. When the listing appeared, Cody wasn't even in Arizona. Public sightings placed him hundreds of miles away, out of state, out of reach. Whatever this move was, it happened during a narrow window, when intervention wasn't possible. And just as quickly as it appeared, the listing vanished. No explanation, no follow-up, just gone. But once screenshots circulate, curiosity turns into investigation, and that's when attention shifted from paperwork to the property itself. Because if a multi-million-dollar home is being rushed onto the market as is, there's usually a reason. For years, viewers noticed signs, background clutter, shrinking spaces, boxes that never seemed to leave. But what was shown publicly may have been the cleanest version of the truth. New information suggests the reality inside that house is far more severe. An account surfaced from someone claiming to have delivered to the residents repeatedly over time. According to them, access became harder with every visit. Entryways narrowed, packages piled up faster than they could be moved. Eventually, items couldn't be brought inside at all. They described air that felt heavy, old, like a space sealed off from circulation. And then they mentioned something that reframed everything. Not objects, not clutter, but sound. A child's voice somewhere beyond the stacks, audible but unreachable. That detail forced people to take a second look at recent aerial images of the home, and suddenly another pattern stood out. Several windows appeared completely blocked, not shaded, blocked, covered from the inside. In isolation, that might mean privacy, but combined with everything else, it suggests concealment. In regions prone to fire, that kind of obstruction isn't just concerning, it's dangerous. And it's exactly the kind of condition that triggers official involvement. Which brings us to the image that changed the conversation entirely. A photo began circulating quietly. It showed the front gate of the property, and attached to it was a bright orange notice. The language wasn't casual, it was formal, regulatory, the kind used when safety standards have been breached. This wasn't advice, it was a warning. Correct the issue or face consequences. And once a notice like that is issued, everything accelerates, especially when children live on the property, especially when safety violations are involved, especially when authorities start asking how a house reached this point in the first place. Because now the question isn't about who listed the house, it's about who alerted the city. Once that orange notice appeared, one question became impossible to ignore. Code enforcement doesn't show up to a gated estate hidden deep in Flagstaff by accident. They don't drive out to multi-million-dollar properties unless someone gives them a reason. Which means someone didn't just notice a problem, someone reported it. And the list of people who could have done that is extremely short. This is where the timeline turns uncomfortable. Multiple sources independently place Mary Brown back in Flagstaff just days before the notice was posted. Not for social reasons, not for filming. She was there to collect remaining belongings and close the final chapter on assets still tied up with the family. That alone wouldn't raise eyebrows, until you line it up with what happened next. If Mary stepped foot inside that house, she would have seen what cameras never showed. Not clutter for television, not staged mess, real obstruction, narrowed pathways, rooms no longer functioning as rooms, windows sealed off from light, air that doesn't move. Mary is known for many things, but chaos isn't one of them. Her business properties are spotless, her standards are rigid. Walking into a home that had become unsafe, especially with children present, wouldn't just be shocking, it would be alarming. That's where motive enters the picture. Because reporting unsafe conditions doesn't require anger or revenge, it requires concern. And if someone believed kids were living in an environment where emergency responders couldn't reach them, staying silent would be harder than speaking up. Then came the timing coincidence that many fans refuse to believe is accidental. The same evening the alleged inspection occurred, Mary posted an Instagram story. Nothing dramatic, no captions, no commentary, just a song playing quietly in the background, burning down the house. On its own, it means nothing. In context, it feels intentional, almost surgical, a message without words, a signal to those paying attention. And that's when the situation inside the Brown household appears to have detonated. Less than 48 hours later, Cody and Robyn were spotted in public, not filming, not posing, not performing. A fan-captured video of the two of them in a parking lot, locked in what can only be described as a private crisis made public. Cody wasn't calm. He wasn't composed. He was pacing, gesturing wildly, invading space. Robyn wasn't placating him. She was crying, cornered, defensive. This wasn't an argument for show. This was panic colliding with betrayal. According to lip-reading analysis shared privately among investigators, one line stands out above all others. "You did it without me." And then the line that reframes the entire story. Where is it? Not the house, not the listing, not the money, something else. This is where long-time speculation suddenly gains weight. Cody has openly distrusted banks for years. He believes in tangible assets, things you can touch, things that can't be frozen or tracked. And insiders have long whispered that large portions of family money were converted into physical stores of wealth: gold, silver, collectibles. And where do you hide physical assets in a house no one can properly search? Inside clutter. Inside boxes, inside chaos. If that wealth was stored somewhere inside the home and the city is now demanding a full cleanout, that creates a nightmare scenario. Because once dumpsters arrive, anything not identified is gone forever. And if authorities oversee the process, secrecy disappears. Suddenly, Robyn's urgency makes sense. The rushed listing, the cash-only demand, the attempt to move fast while Cody was out of state. It wasn't just about selling a house, it was about extracting something from inside it, and now that extraction may no longer be possible. Fire marshal involvement doesn't exist in isolation. In cases involving blocked exits and unsafe living conditions, mandatory reporting protocols are triggered, and that leads to the most serious consequence of all: child services. If investigators determine that children are living in a space where escape routes are blocked, air quality is compromised, or emergency access is impossible, removal becomes a real option, not a threat. This is why the silence from the family has become so loud. This is why the listing vanished. This is why neighbors are now reporting unusual activity on the property late at night. Lights on, trailers parked, vehicles moved, as if spaces inside the home are no longer usable. And this is where the power dynamic flips, because the man who demanded the biggest house, the most control, and the final say may no longer be welcome inside it. If the reports are true, Cody is now sleeping outside the mansion, in a trailer, while Robyn remains inside, surrounded by boxes, deadlines, and decisions that can't be undone. So now, the clock is ticking louder than ever. Either the house is cleared under city supervision, or the situation escalates beyond property and into custody.